Mr. Chairman, members, good morning. As it's the first full council meeting of 2026, I think it's still appropriate to wish everyone a happy new year. As is customary at our February meeting, today we ask Council to approve a budget for 2026-27, a budget that keeps essential services running, protects the most vulnerable and provides stability through a year of transition for local government in Surrey. A budget that seeks to deliver on our ambition of no one left behind. It has been prepared in the most challenging of circumstances, yet it is balanced and responsible, reflecting careful management over many years and a clear line of sight to our priorities and statutory duties. Before turning to the detail, I want to place on record my thanks. First and foremost to our Section 151 officer, Andy Brown, and the finance team, and in particular, Nikki O'Connor and Rachel Wigley, for their professionalism and diligence in assembling this budget against a highly complex and moving backdrop. And secondly, to those group leaders across the chamber who have engaged constructively through scrutiny, workshops and meetings. You have brought challenge and contribution, and you did so with residents' best interests in mind. That approach has hopefully brought a large degree of cross-party consensus on this budget, and I'm most grateful for that engagement. The Liberal Democrat group, through its leader, has chosen not to bring forward any amendments. However, he did try to subvert the budget setting process by claiming that our council constitution required a medium-term financial strategy to be published alongside the annual budget. Even though his misunderstanding has been corrected by officers and independently verified, he has still refused to accept that he is wrong. But to stop him wasting more officer time and to allow this council to get on to set a budget for our residents, I asked officers on Friday, when I first heard of his antics, to freshen up the previous MTFS. This has now been published as a supplementary agenda to the budget papers, despite there being no legal requirement whatsoever to do so, and despite the fact that the two unitary councils, as he well knows, will be the lawful bodies for setting the budgets from 2027. But then last night I was sent a Facebook post from a Liberal Democratic councillor, riddled with inaccurate and misleading statements, misinformation that is willfully misleading residents. I say to that councillor, and indeed to anyone else that has turned up this morning intending to vote down this budget, be honest with yourself, with this council, and above all, with the public. The Liberal Democrat group have not engaged in this process over the past 4 or 5 months, whether that's been through the scrutiny process at select committees, attending the Cabinet in November, member briefings, the January Cabinet meeting, or indeed at today's council meeting. All opportunities to influence the final year's budget. So let me be crystal clear. The published budget sets out how this council will allocate its income in 2026-27. Income received from our hard-working residents, and the last budget before this council is abolished. Setting out what a budget might look like in 2027, 28, 29 is absolutely pointless. Though in fact the Cabinet papers published back in November did set out a high-level view at Section 8 of Appendix 1, but we cannot tie the hands of the new councils that will be elected in just over 3 months' time. It will be their legal responsibility to set the forward budgets. To suggest, as some have, that it is impossible to set the budget for 26-27 because they don't know what the position will look like in subsequent years is utter nonsense. And it does those individuals no credit whatsoever for peddling such untruths. Residents will not thank you for shirking your responsibility to set a balanced budget from the 1st of April 2026, a budget that you have not made any attempt to shape, and most certainly won't thank you if that failure and abrogation of duty is driven by some sort of misplaced attempt to seek political gain in the upcoming elections. Residents will see that for exactly what it is. So stand up and do your elected duty to set a balanced budget for this council for its final year. Mr. Chairman, let's get on with the real business of this meeting and look at the wider context in which we have set the budget, the final budget for Surrey County Council. Local government is operating under unprecedented strain. Inflation has eased from its peak, but the costs that shape our services, care placements, specialist transport, construction, utilities, staffing, remain stubbornly high. These are the pressures that drive our real-world budgets, and they are not captured fully by headline inflation rates. At the same time, demand for our services continues to rise, especially in adults, children's services and SEND, reflecting demographic trends, complexity in need, and market fragility. The local government finance settlement brought some certainty in the form of a multi-year settlement, but it also confirmed what we and other county areas feared. The bulk of the claimed increase in core spending power is predicated on councils raising council tax to the maximum, rather than on any meaningful additional government funding. Let me turn specifically to the government's fair funding review. We have argued for reform for years. Funding formulas should be transparent, up to date, and aligned to real cost drivers. That's adult social care, children's social care, home to school transport, SEND pressures, the impact of rurality on the cost of delivering services, and market conditions. Those principles are right, but the outcomes as currently configured are not. For county areas like Surrey, central government funding covers as little as 2 pence in every pound of new cost pressures, leaving the remainder to be met locally through council tax. And political choices in the settlement, the government settlement, clearly advantage metropolitan areas and London boroughs at the expense of county and rural areas. To ministers, I say this: we welcome reform done right, simpler grants, multi-year planning, and formulas that genuinely reflect need. But we cannot and will not quietly accept a model that means our residents will pay more each year to, at best, simply stand still. We will lose 180 million of government funding over the next 3 years, an impossible sum of money to replace other than from council tax increases. That is a government political decision, and one over which this council has no control. If the government expects councils to meet rising statutory demands in care and education, then funding must match these expectations. That has been my constant message to all governments, and particularly to this one, as they consulted on the review. I said that as leader of the council, and I said that as chair of the County Councils Network. But it is evident that the intention all along was to move money from the southeast to other parts of the country, despite our heavy lobbying on the consequences for county councils, and for this council in particular. Is it right that by 2028, 92% of the income into this county will be raised through council tax, a shift from the current year of 77%? No, it isn't. However, despite the devastatingly poor settlement from government and the national headwinds, we are bringing forward a balanced budget for the coming year. And Mr. Chairman, this is a remarkable feat. We have a strong track record of financial stewardship in Surrey County Council, particularly over the last 7 years. But as I have set out, we operate in an environment of rising costs, rising demand, and constrained government support. Difficult decisions, tight financial management, and line-by-line scrutiny have been necessary to maintain that resilience and ensure our core services are protected. We have structured the budget around 3 clear principles. Firstly, protecting people-facing services, adults, children's, and SEND, because they are statutory, high risk, and life-critical for residents. Secondly, maintaining financial resilience with prudent reserves, realistic delivery plans, and careful management of risk. And thirdly, investing to save, prioritising prevention and early intervention where they improve outcomes and reduce long-term costs. Members, our primary duty is to residents who rely on us the most. Demand in adults continues to grow with increasing complexity and acuity, particularly for working age adults with learning disabilities and for older people living longer with multiple conditions. Children's Services is also dealing with rising complexity and need, as well as higher placement costs, alongside a national market for care that remains fragile. SEND pressures, both in education and home-to-school transport, continue to climb as need and demand increases, and specialist places remain under significant pressure. These are not discretionary services. They are moral and statutory obligations that we must meet. That is why this budget ensures that the majority of our resources are directed to people's services. And it is why we continue to invest in early help, community support and independence, because every pound spent helping someone stay well, safe and independent is a pound that avoids cost, escalation and poorer outcomes later on. Mr. Chairman, I also want to be candid about inflation. While headline indices have eased, the inflation that matters to councils is still sticky. Care placements and provider fees reflect workforce pressures, living wage uplifts and regulatory costs. Construction and highways costs remain well above historic norms, with supply chains still volatile. We have not built a budget that pretends last year's prices will pay for this year's services. We have built a budget that funds the real cost of delivery. No discussion of the budget is complete without addressing council tax. We know households remain under real pressure from the cost of living. We also know that the government settlement expects councils, especially counties, to use the full flexibility on council tax and the social care precept to sustain services. So let me be straightforward. We do not take decisions lightly on council tax. We do understand, absolutely understand what it means for families and people worried about their bills. And we will continue to make a wide range of support available and work with our district and borough colleagues and VCSE partners on welfare, debt and advice services. But it is equally true that without using the only flexibility available to us, namely increasing council tax, the services our residents depend on would face unacceptable risk. Our position remains that long-term sustainability requires a fairer national settlement that does not push disproportionate reliance onto council taxpayers. And we will continue to make this point to the government. Chair, this budget is also set in the context of local government reorganisation. The government has confirmed that Surrey's current 12 councils will be replaced by two new unitary councils, East and West Surrey, by April 2027. Elections to shadow authorities will take place in May this year, and joint committees are already working to prepare for transition. For Surrey County Council, that means that 2026-27 is our final full year in the current form. Our responsibilities are clear: to keep services stable and residents supported whilst laying strong foundations for the new councils. This budget is designed deliberately to protect that shrewd and stable financial foundation we have built. No risky offloading of pressures, no short-term fixes that create cliff edges in April 2027. Residents should notice consistent and dependable delivery of services throughout this transition, with clarity about who does what and when. And we are setting foundations that are solid and resilient as possible for the new authorities coming in 2027. Balancing the budget requires difficult choices. We have continued to drive efficiencies, modernising processes, improving procurement, making smarter use of our estate, and digitising where it improves outcomes. We have targeted investment in areas that save money in the medium term and improves lives, such as prevention, independence and capacity, where it reduces expensive out-of-area placements. And we have maintained our financial resilience with prudent reserves and robust risk management. This is how we avoid the fate of other authorities forced into Section 114 or exceptional financial support. This is how we keep our promises to residents. So what can residents expect on the back of this budget and the hard work of this council? Adult social care that is safe, compassionate and focused on independence so people can live well in their own homes for longer. Children's services that support families earlier and invest in local capacity to reduce costly placements. SEND support that is getting better, particularly around local provision and the transport system that helps families access what they need. Core services, local services, such as roads, libraries, fire and rescue, public health, deliver with commitment, innovation, value for money, and working to fulfil our mission that no one's left behind. Chair, this is not an easy budget to set for all the reasons that I've outlined, but it is a responsible one, balanced, realistic, and resident-focused. It acknowledges inflation and demand where they are, not where we wish them to be. It prioritises people-facing services, where our interventions matter the most. It supports residents who are struggling with the costs of living, but being honest about the increases in council tax resulting from a massive reduction in government funding. It navigates local government reorganisation by protecting continuity and laying solid foundations for East Surrey and West Surrey. And it sends a clear message to government. We will do our part, now fund us fairly to do it. On that basis, and again, with thanks to those colleagues across the chamber who have sought constructive engagement and indeed to officers for their diligent work, I commend to members this 1 year and final budget for Surrey County Council.